Daddy, can we save her? Mafia boss protects woman from two hitmen in restaurant, next day. The rain drummed against the windows of Salvatore's, an upscale Italian restaurant tucked away in the quieter part of the city. Vince Torino sat across from his 8-year-old daughter, Sophia, watching her twirl spaghetti around her fork with the concentration of a surgeon. Her small tongue poked out slightly, a habit she'd inherited from her late mother. Daddy, why do you always sit facing the door? Sophia asked, not looking up from her plate. Vince's steel-gray eyes never left the entrance. Old habit, princess. Eat your dinner. He was known in certain circles as Il Lupo Nero, the Black Wolf. Men twice his size would cross the street rather than meet his gaze. At 42, Vincent Torino controlled the docks, the unions, and half the judges in the city. His word was law, his silence was death, and his mercy was a currency he rarely spent. But tonight, he was just a father trying to give his daughter a normal evening. Can I get dessert? Sophia's bright green eyes sparkled with hope. We'll see. Vince's voice was softer when he spoke to her, the only person who could melt the ice in his veins. Finish your vegetables first. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversation. Crystal glasses clinked, silverware scraped against fine china, and somewhere in the background, Sinatra crooned about flying to the moon. It was the kind of place where money talked and nobody asked questions about the source. That's when she walked in. The woman entered alone, shaking raindrops from her dark hair. She was maybe 30, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to catalogue every face in the room before settling on an empty table by the window. Something about her movements caught Vince's attention, too careful, too aware. She moved like someone who'd learned to watch her back. Daddy, look at that lady, Sophia whispered, pointing with her fork. She looks sad. Vince glanced at his daughter, then back at the woman. Sophia had always been perceptive, reading emotions in strangers the way other kids read picture books. The woman did look sad, or maybe haunted was the better word. Don't stare, Sophia. It's not polite. But Vince found himself watching anyway. The woman ordered quietly, her fingers drumming nervously against the white tablecloth. She kept glancing toward the door, and when the waiter brought her wine, her hand trembled slightly as she lifted the glass. She's scared, Sophia observed, her voice barely audible. Before Vince could respond, the front door exploded open. Two men in dark coats burst through, rainwater dripping from their shoulders. Vince's hand instinctively moved toward his jacket, where a .45 waited in its shoulder holster. His eyes narrowed as he assessed the threat. Both men were professionals. The way they moved, the bulges under their arms, the cold focus in their eyes. The first man was tall and thin, with a scar running from his left ear to his jaw. The second was built like a boxer, with hands that looked like they'd broken more than their share of bones. They weren't here for the veal piccata. The restaurant fell silent except for the soft jazz still playing overhead. Other diners sensed the shift in atmosphere, conversations dying mid-sentence. The woman by the window had gone rigid. Her wine glass stopped halfway to her lips, and Vince saw her face drain of color. She knew why they were here. Target acquired, the scarred man muttered to his partner, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. Amateur mistake. Or maybe they didn't care about witnesses. Daddy. Sophia's small voice was tight with fear. She'd pressed herself back in her chair, her pasta forgotten. What's happening? Stay calm, princess, Vince whispered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline starting to pump through his veins. Everything's going to be fine. But he knew it wasn't. He'd seen this dance before, hunters and prey, predator and victim. The woman was alone, outgunned, and trapped. In 30 seconds she'd be dead. The two hitmen started walking toward her table with the casual confidence of men who'd done this before. Other diners began to notice, some reaching for their phones, others looking toward the exits. The smart ones were already leaving. Please, the woman said, her voice carrying across the now silent restaurant. I don't know what you want. I haven't done anything. The scarred man laughed, a sound like grinding glass. Nice try, sweetheart. But hiding for 15 years doesn't change who you are. 15 years. Vince filed that information away, his mind already working through possibilities. What could a woman have done 15 years ago that would warrant execution today? There are people here, she said, gesturing to the other diners. Innocent people. Not our problem. The boxer replied, reaching inside his coat. That's when Sophia grabbed Vince's sleeve. Daddy, she whispered, her voice breaking. Daddy, can we save her? The words hit him like a physical blow. His daughter, his innocent, pure-hearted daughter, was asking him to risk everything for a stranger. To go against every instinct he'd developed over 20 years in this business. Vince looked at Sophia's face, saw the tears forming in her green eyes, and felt something crack inside his chest. In his world, you didn't help strangers. You didn't get involved in other people's problems. You protected what was yours and let everyone else burn. But Sophia was looking at him like he was her hero, waiting for him to do the right thing. And maybe, just maybe, that's what she needed to see tonight. Stay down, he told her firmly. Whatever happens, stay under this table. Before she could respond, Vince was moving. He stood smoothly, his chair barely making a sound as it slid back. The hitmen were focused on their target, but Vince had spent his life reading rooms, reading people, reading death before it arrived. Gentlemen, he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. I think you have the wrong restaurant. Both men turned, and Vince saw the moment they recognized him. The scarred man's eyes widened slightly, and his partner took a half-step back. In their world, Vincent Torino was a legend, a ghost story parents told to keep children in line. Mr. Torino, the scarred man said carefully, this doesn't concern you. Just a business matter. In my neighborhood, everything concerns me. Vince stepped away from his table, putting himself between the gunman and Sophia. And I don't like my dinner interrupted. The boxer was getting nervous, his hand twitching toward his weapon. We got orders, man. Nothing personal. Orders from who? Vince's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more threat than a shout. You know we can't. Vince moved like lightning. His first shot took the scarred man's center mass before the hitman could clear his holster. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, sending diners screaming toward the exits. The boxer managed to draw his gun, but Vince was already rolling behind a nearby table. Call 911! Someone screamed. Get down! Everyone get down! The boxer fired twice, splintering wood and shattering wine glasses. Vince came up from behind an overturned table and put 2 bullets in the man's chest. The boxer dropped like a stone, his gun clattering across the marble floor. Sudden silence fell over the restaurant, broken only by the sound of sirens in the distance and Sophia's quiet crying. Vince holstered his weapon and walked to where the woman sat frozen at her table. Up close, he could see she was beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way. Her hands were steady now, and her eyes held a calculating intelligence that hadn't been there before. Are you hurt? He asked. She shook her head, studying his face. Vincent Torino. I should have known. Something in her tone made him pause. She'd recognized him, but not with the usual fear or respect. This was something else, something that felt almost like recognition? Do we know each other? No, she said quickly. But everyone knows who you are. Before he could respond, Sophia appeared at his side, tears streaming down her face. She threw her arms around his waist, and he felt her small body shaking against him. Is she okay, Daddy? Did we save her? Vince looked down at his daughter, then back at the mysterious woman. Something was off about this whole situation. Professional hitmen didn't usually announce themselves, and they certainly didn't waste time with dramatic speeches. This felt like a message, but to whom? Yeah, Princess, he said softly, running his hand through Sophia's hair. We saved her. The woman stood slowly, and Vince noticed she moved with a grace that spoke of training, the kind of training you didn't get in finishing schools. Thank you, she said, but her eyes were already moving toward the back exit. I should go before the police arrive. Not so fast, Vince said. Those men knew you. Knew you'd be here. How? She paused, her hand on the back of her chair. Sometimes the past catches up with you, Mr. Torino. I'm sure you understand. She was right. He did understand. But that didn't mean he was letting her walk away, not when his daughter had just witnessed a gunfight because of her, not when professional killers had invaded his neighborhood. Sophia, he said quietly. Go wait by the kitchen. Tell Marco to take you out the back way and wait for me in the car. But Daddy. Now, Princess. Sophia looked between him and the woman, then reluctantly obeyed. She paused at the kitchen door and looked back. What's your name? She called to the woman. The woman hesitated. Elena, she said finally. My name is Elena. As Sophia disappeared into the kitchen, Vince turned back to the woman who claimed her name was Elena. Something about her was familiar, the tilt of her head, the way she held herself. Like an echo of someone he'd known long ago. Elena what? He asked. Does it matter? I'll be gone by morning. It matters to me. My daughter asked me to save you. That makes you my responsibility now. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Your responsibility? Mr. Torino, you don't even know what you've gotten yourself into. The sirens were getting closer now, and Vince could hear the sound of police radios crackling outside. In a few minutes this place would be crawling with cops, reporters, and questions he didn't want to answer. Then why don't you tell me? He said. Starting with why 2 professional hitmen wanted you dead badly enough to try it in public. Elena, if that was really her name, picked up her purse and slung it over her shoulder. For the first time since the shooting, she looked directly into his eyes. Because some bloodlines are too dangerous to let survive, she said quietly. And some secrets are worth killing for. Before he could respond, she was walking toward the back exit, moving with that same careful precision he noticed when she entered. At the door, she paused and looked back. Your daughter has a good heart, Mr. Torino. Don't let this world take that away from her. And then she was gone, vanishing into the rainy night like smoke. Vince stood alone in the destroyed restaurant, surrounded by overturned tables, broken glass, and 2 dead hitmen. The sound of sirens filled the air, and he could hear his men arriving through the back entrance, Marco's voice calling his name, asking if Sophia was safe. He looked down at the scarred man's body and noticed something he'd missed before. The man's left hand bore a tattoo, a snake wrapped around a dagger. Vince had seen that mark before years ago, on men who'd served a family that no longer existed. The Rossellis. The most powerful crime family on the East Coast, until they'd been wiped out in a single bloody night 15 years ago. Every man, woman, and child, or so the story went. But if Elena was connected to the Rossellis, if she was somehow connected to that massacre. Mr. Torino? Marco appeared at his shoulder, assault rifle in hand. You okay? Sophia's safe in the car. Yeah, Vince said, still staring at the tattoo. I'm fine. But as he holstered his gun and prepared to deal with the police, he couldn't shake the feeling that he just stepped into something much bigger than a simple rescue. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that Elena's bloodline comment hadn't been a metaphor. It had been a warning. The police questioning lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of the same story repeated to different badges. Vincent Torino, respected businessman, had been enjoying dinner with his daughter when armed robbers burst in. He'd acted in self-defense to protect innocent civilians. The security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned that evening, a common occurrence in establishments that valued their customers' privacy. Detective Ray Morrison, a thin man with tired eyes who'd been trying to pin something on Vince for years, wasn't buying it. 2 professional hits, Torino. Perfect kill shots. These weren't robbers. Then maybe you should investigate who they really were, Vince replied calmly, adjusting his cufflinks. I'm sure their fingerprints will tell an interesting story. Morrison's jaw tightened, but they both knew how this would end. No witnesses would come forward. The security footage would show nothing useful. And Vincent Torino would walk out of here a free man, just like always. By midnight, Vince was finally driving home through empty streets, Sophia asleep in the back seat. She'd been unusually quiet after the shooting, asking only once if this sad lady was safe now. He'd told her yes, but the lie sat heavy in his chest. At home, he carried Sophia to her room and tucked her into bed. She stirred as he kissed her forehead. "Daddy?" she whispered. "Will I see Elena again?" The question caught him off guard. "Why would you want to?" She seemed lonely. Like she needed a friend. Even in her sleepy state, Sophia's empathy shone through. It was both her greatest gift, and what would probably get her killed in his world, if he let it. "Maybe, princess. Maybe." After Sophia fell back asleep, Vince poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat in his study, staring at the rain streaking down the windows. He couldn't shake the image of Elena's face when she looked at him. There had been something there, not fear, not gratitude, but recognition. The kind you felt when you saw a ghost. At 2 a.m., his secure phone buzzed. Marco's voice was tense. "Boss, we got a problem. That woman from tonight, she didn't disappear. Where is she?" "The Meridian Hotel. Penthouse suite. And boss, she paid cash. A lot of cash." Vince was quiet for a long moment. A woman running for her life didn't book penthouse suites. She found the cheapest motel possible and kept moving. "Keep eyes on her. Don't approach. I want to know who visits, who calls, what she orders from room service. Already on it. But boss, there's something else. We ran the names of those 2 hitmen through our contacts. And Carlo Benedetti and Tony Scaramucci. They used to work for the Rosselli family before the massacre." Vince closed his eyes, pieces of a 15-year-old puzzle starting to fall into place. "Any word on who hired them?" "Still working on it. But boss, if the Rossellis are involved somehow..." "The Rossellis are dead, Marco. All of them." "Yeah, that's what everyone thought." The line went quiet. Both men understood the implications. If a Rosselli had survived the massacre that had reshuffled the entire East Coast power structure, it would explain why professional killers were crawling out of the woodwork. "Double the security on Sophia," Vince ordered. "And find out everything you can about our mysterious Elena." The next morning brought unexpected news. Vince was reviewing shipment manifests when Marco knocked on his office door, laptop in hand. "You're going to want to see this, boss." On the screen was a Society page photo from the Chronicle, dated 15 years ago. A charity gala for some children's hospital. In the center of the photo stood Don Antonio Rosselli, the most feared man on the East Coast, with his arm around a beautiful woman in an elegant gown. But it was the young girl standing beside them that made Vince's blood run cold. She was maybe 15, with the same sharp cheekbones and intelligent eyes he'd seen the night before. The same tilt of the head, the same way of holding herself like she was ready to run or fight. "Elena Rosselli," Marco read from the photo caption. "Daughter of Don Antonio Rosselli and his wife Maria, photographed at the annual St. Vincent's Children's Hospital benefit." Elena hadn't lied about her name. She just left off the part that would have gotten her killed. "She's the daughter," Vince whispered. "The missing piece." According to legend, every member of the Rosselli family had been eliminated in a coordinated strike 15 years ago. Houses burned, bodies found, a bloodline erased in a single night. But legends, Vince was learning, sometimes left out important details. "There's more," Marco said, scrolling down. "Look at what she's wearing." Around Elena's neck in the photograph was a distinctive necklace, a gold chain with a pendant shaped like a rose, each petal set with small diamonds. It was the Rosselli family crest, worn only by blood members. The same necklace he'd glimpsed last night when she reached for her wine glass. "Jesus Christ," Vince breathed. "She's not just connected to the Rossellis. She is a Rosselli. The last one, by the look of it. No wonder they want her dead." Vince leaned back in his chair, mind racing. "She's living proof that the massacre wasn't complete. And in our world, incomplete jobs have a way of coming back to bite you. So what do we do?" Before Vince could answer, his phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Torino?" The voice was familiar, smooth, controlled, with just a hint of vulnerability underneath. Elena. I was wondering when you'd call. We need to talk. There are things you don't understand about last night. Try me. A pause. Not over the phone. Do you know Pier 47? The old warehouse district? Vince knew it well. Abandoned buildings, no surveillance, perfect for conversations that couldn't happen anywhere else. 1 hour. She said. Come alone. Elena. My real name is Elena Rosselli. And if you're half as smart as your reputation suggests, you already know what that means. The line went dead. Marco was staring at him. Boss, this has trap written all over it. Maybe. Or maybe she's finally ready to tell the truth. Vince stood and reached for his jacket. Either way, I need to know what I've gotten myself into. What I've gotten Sophia into. You're not seriously going alone? She saved my daughter's life by asking me to save hers. The least I can do is hear her out. How do you figure she saved Sophia's life? Vince paused at the door. Because if I hadn't intervened, if I'd let those hitmen kill her, Sophia would have seen her father do nothing while an innocent woman died. That would have broken something in her that could never be fixed. As he left the office, Vince couldn't help but smile grimly. He'd spent 20 years building a reputation as a man who looked out for himself and his own. Last night, his 8-year-old daughter had reminded him that sometimes, the right thing to do was also the most dangerous. And Elena Rosselli, the ghost of a dead family, the woman who shouldn't exist, was about to tell him just how dangerous this particular right thing might be. Pier 47 smelled of rust and rotting wood, the kind of place where conversations happened in shadows and secrets were buried with the tides. Vince arrived 15 minutes early, his .45 loaded and ready under his jacket. The warehouse district was a graveyard of the city's industrial past, perfect for meetings that never officially happened. Elena was already there. She stood silhouetted against a broken window, the afternoon light cutting through the dusty air around her. She changed from her elegant restaurant attire into dark jeans and a leather jacket, but she still wore the rose pendant, like a target painted on her chest. You came alone, she said without turning around. So did you. That makes us both either very brave or very stupid. She turned then, and Vince saw something in her face that hadn't been there the night before. The mask had slipped, revealing exhaustion and a pain so deep it seemed carved into her bones. My father used to say that bravery and stupidity were separated by success, she said. I haven't decided which this is yet. Your father said a lot of things, including that the Rosselli family would last forever. Elena's smile was bitter. Forever lasted exactly 23 years, 4 months, and 16 days. But who's counting? You are. Every day since they died. Vince stepped closer, studying her face in the dim light. Now that he knew who she was, the resemblance to Don Antonio was unmistakable. The same aristocratic nose, the same way of holding her head like she was surveying a kingdom. The reports said everyone died. No survivors. The reports lied. Elena pulled out a cigarette with shaking hands. Or maybe they just repeated what they were told to believe. So tell me what really happened. Elena lit her cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating scars on her wrists, thin lines that spoke of old violence. March 15th, 15 years ago. I was 17, away at boarding school in Switzerland. My father thought education was important, even for daughters. Especially for daughters. She took a long drag, organizing memories that clearly still cut deep. The call came at 3 a.m. My mother, screaming into the phone that they were all dead. My father, my brothers, my uncles, everyone. She said the house was burning and she could hear gunshots. Then the line went dead. But she survived. For 6 months. Long enough to get me new papers, a new identity, and a bank account in the Caymans. She made me promise to never use the Rosselli name, never try to find out who killed them, never seek revenge. Elena's voice cracked. She died of a brain aneurysm in a Montreal hospital, clutching my hand and making me swear to live a normal life. But you didn't. I tried. The cigarette trembled between her fingers. God, I tried. I went to college, got a degree in art history, worked at a gallery in Philadelphia. I dated a pediatrician named David who wanted to marry me and give me 2 kids and a house with a white picket fence. What changed? 3 weeks ago, David turned up dead in his apartment. Single gunshot to the head, made to look like a robbery. But they left his wallet, his watch, his medical bag full of prescription drugs. She met Vince's eyes. They only took one thing, a photo from his nightstand. A photo of me. The pieces clicked into place. Someone had been tracking her, getting close, eliminating anyone who might know her real identity. That's when you knew. That's when I realized my mother had been naive. You can't hide from what you are. Blood calls to blood, and the Rosselli blood. She touched the pendant. It's worth too much to too many people. Worth what exactly? Elena dropped her cigarette and crushed it under her heel. My father wasn't just another Don, Mr. Torino. He was the banker for half the families on the East Coast. Swiss accounts, offshore holdings, legitimate businesses that laundered money for everyone from the Gambinos to the Marchettis. When he died, that information died with him. Except it didn't. Because he taught me the family business from the time I could walk. Account numbers, passwords, contact names, safe houses, all of it locked up in here. She tapped her temple. 15 years of compound interest, and I'm the only one who knows where it all went. Vince whistled low. How much are we talking about? Conservative estimate? $800 million. Maybe more. Now he understood why professional killers were hunting her. 800 million was enough to start wars, end them, or buy whatever loyalty you needed. Who else knows? That's the question, isn't it? Someone figured out I was alive. Someone with enough reach to track me across 3 states and enough connections to hire Benedetti and Scaramucci. Someone who wants either the money or me dead, probably both. Any ideas? Elena was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the harbor where ships moved like ghosts through the afternoon mist. The night my family died, there was supposed to be a meeting. All the major families, discussing territory disputes and profit-sharing agreements. My father was hosting it at our estate. She turned back to Vince. But the meeting was moved at the last minute. Someone convinced everyone to gather at the Marconi warehouse instead. While the hit squad went to your house. Exactly. Someone knew about the meeting, knew it would draw my father's security away from the family compound. Someone with inside information. Someone who was supposed to be at that meeting. Someone who spent the last 15 years building their empire on my family's graves, using information they shouldn't have had access to. Elena's voice turned cold, and for a moment Vince heard the echo of Don Antonio Rosselli in his daughter's words. Someone who thought they'd covered all their tracks. But they missed you. They missed me. And now I know something they don't think I know. Which is? Elena smiled, and it was the most dangerous expression Vince had ever seen on a woman's face. I know who betrayed my family, Mr. Torino. I've known for 3 years, but I couldn't prove it. Now I don't need proof, I just need justice. Who? Someone you know very well. Someone who's been expanding into Rosselli territory ever since we were eliminated. Someone who suddenly had access to Swiss bank account information that helped him fund his rise to power. Vince felt ice form in his stomach. Elena. Vincent Torino. She said quietly. It was you. The words hung in the dusty air between them like a death sentence. Vince's hand moved instinctively toward his gun, but Elena didn't flinch. Except, she continued, I know it wasn't. The relief was so sudden it almost dropped him to his knees. Because you would have killed me last night instead of saving me. Because your daughter's innocence is real, which means yours might be too. And because the real traitor made one crucial mistake. What mistake? Elena reached into her jacket, and Vince tensed, but she only pulled out a manila envelope. They used my father's money to buy their way into your territory, Mr. Torino. Your docks, your unions, your judges. They'd been playing a 15-year game, and you've been their unwitting pawn. She handed him the envelope. The question is, what are you going to do when you find out who's been using you? Inside the envelope were bank statements, wire transfer records, and photocopied documents that made Vince's blood run cold. Someone had indeed been using Rosselli money to influence his world. And the signature on every transaction belonged to someone he trusted with his life. The signature at the bottom of each document was as familiar to Vince as his own reflection: Anthony Big Tony Marconi. His oldest friend, his most trusted lieutenant, the man who'd stood as Sophia's godfather at her christening. Vince stared at the papers until the letters blurred together, his mind refusing to process what his eyes were seeing. Tony had been there for 20 years. Through Maria's death, through Sophia's birth, through every major decision that had built the Torino Empire. "How long have you known?" His voice came out as a whisper. 3 years. "A private investigator I hired found the connection, but I needed more proof before I could act." Elena's voice was surprisingly gentle. "I'm sorry. I know what betrayal feels like." Vince folded the papers carefully, his movements mechanical. 20 years. 20 fucking years. He's been patient. Building his own network inside your organization, skimming from operations, positioning himself to take over when the time was right. The Rosselli money gave him the capital to buy loyalty. And killing you would have tied up the last loose end. Exactly. With me dead, no one could trace the money back to its source. He'd be clean. Vince pulled out his phone, then stopped. Who could he call? Who could he trust? If Tony had been working against him for years, how deep did the corruption go? "There's more," Elena said quietly. "The reason those Hitmen found me at the restaurant. Someone told them I'd be there." "Who knew about your dinner plans?" "No one. I chose that restaurant randomly, paid cash, didn't use my real name for the reservation." She met his eyes. "But someone was watching you, Mr. Torino. Someone who knew your routines, your favorite places. They were using you as bait." The full scope of Tony's betrayal hit him like a physical blow. His friend hadn't just stolen money, he'd turned Vince's own life into a trap. "My daughter," Vince said, ice forming in his veins. "If he was willing to use me as bait, she's safe for now. But Mr. Torino, there's something else you need to know." Before she could continue, Vince's phone buzzed. Marco's name on the display. "Boss, we got a problem. Big Tony called an emergency meeting. Says there's been a security breach. He wants all the senior guys at the warehouse in an hour." "What kind of security breach?" "He wouldn't say over the phone." "But boss, some of the guys are asking questions about last night. About why you risked everything for some stranger." Vince closed his eyes. Tony was moving faster than expected, using the restaurant incident to turn his own people against him. Who's asking questions? Sal Benedetto, Mike Romano, Joey the Fish. The ones who've been closest to Tony lately. And the others? Still loyal, but they're confused. They need to hear from you directly. Vince ended the call and looked at Elena. He's making his move. Using what happened last night to turn my people against me. You can't go to that meeting. It's a trap. If I don't go, I look guilty. Weak. In my world, that's the same as being dead. Elena stepped closer. Then we need to get there first. Change the rules of the game. We? You saved my life. More importantly, your daughter asked you to save me, and you did. That means something in my world too. She touched the rose pendant. The Rosselli family never forgot its debts. Before Vince could respond, his phone rang again. This time the number made his blood freeze, his home landline. Daddy? Sophia's voice was small, frightened. There are men here. They want to talk to you. In the background, Vince heard Tony's voice. Tell your daddy we're just keeping you company until he gets home. Nothing to worry about. Let me talk to Tony, Vince said, his voice deadly calm. Hey, Vincent. Sorry about this, but we need to have a conversation. Just you and me, like old times. If you hurt her. Hurt her? Vincent, I'm her godfather. I love that little girl like she's my own. But she's asking too many questions about last night. About that woman you saved. People are starting to talk. What do you want? The warehouse meeting is off. New location, your house. 1 hour. Come alone, and we'll sort this out like civilized people. The line went dead. Elena was watching him, and he saw understanding in her eyes. He has your daughter. Yeah. Then we go get her. Elena, this isn't your fight anymore. You got what you wanted. You know who betrayed your family. Take the information and disappear. She shook her head. That little girl saved my life by asking you to save it. Now it's my turn. She pulled a gun from her jacket, a sleek Beretta that looked like it had seen recent use. Besides, I told you there was something else you needed to know. What? Tony Marconi didn't just betray your family and mine. 3 weeks ago, he put out a contract on a pediatrician in Philadelphia. A man whose only crime was falling in love with the wrong woman. The pieces fell into place. David, Elena's boyfriend. The photo they'd taken from his nightstand. He's been hunting you this whole time. For 3 years. Getting closer, eliminating anyone who might know my real identity. When he found David, he knew he was close. Elena's voice turned hard. That man killed the only person who ever made me feel normal. Who ever made me think I could have a different life. Elena. My mother made me promise not to seek revenge. But she also taught me that some promises become impossible to keep. She checked her weapon with professional efficiency. Tony Marconi took my family, my childhood, my chance at love, and now he's threatening yours. That makes this personal. Vince studied her face and saw something that chilled him, the cold calculation of someone who had nothing left to lose. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that sometimes the best way to survive a trap is to spring a better one. Elena smiled, and in that expression, Vince saw the ghost of Don Antonio Rosselli. How well do you know your own house, Mr. Toreno? Better than anyone. Good. Because we're going to teach Tony Marconi why the Rosselli family motto was never about forgiveness. What was it about? Justice. Swift, certain, and final. As they left the warehouse together, Vince realized that his decision to save Elena had changed everything. The quiet life he tried to build for Sophia was over. The empire he'd spent 20 years creating was fracturing. But looking at the woman beside him, the last daughter of a murdered bloodline, walking into danger to save his child, he knew he'd made the right choice. Some prices were worth paying. Even if it meant war. Vince's estate sat on 5 acres of manicured grounds, surrounded by a 12-foot stone wall that had always made him feel secure. Now, driving through the gates with Elena beside him, it felt like entering a tomb. How many entrances? Elena asked, studying the house with tactical precision. 4. Front door, back patio, kitchen service entrance, and my study has French doors to the garden. Security system? Disabled remotely 30 minutes ago. Tony has the codes. Elena nodded grimly. He's been planning this for a while. What about Sophia's room? 2nd floor, northeast corner. 2 windows, but there's a 20-foot drop to the driveway. Good. Harder to use as an escape route, but also harder for them to watch. She checked her Beretta again. How many men will he have? Inside? Probably 3 or 4. Tony's smart. Too many and it looks like a hostile takeover. Too few and he can't control the situation. They parked behind the garden shed, out of sight from the house. Through the evening shadows, Vince could see lights in his living room and Sophia's bedroom window. His daughter was up there, probably terrified, while the man he trusted like a brother held her hostage in her own home. Before we go in, Elena said quietly, there's something you need to understand. The money, the accounts, the information I carry, it's not just numbers on paper. It's power. Enough to reshape the entire East Coast hierarchy. And, if we survive tonight, people are going to want that power. Not just Tony's allies, but families from New York, Boston, Atlantic City. Everyone who's ever wanted a bigger piece of the pie. Vince looked at her in the dim light. You're saying this won't end with Tony. I'm saying this is just the beginning. But there's another way. I'm listening. Elena reached into her jacket and pulled out a leather portfolio, expensive, worn with age, marked with the Rosselli family crest. My father's insurance policy. Complete records of every family's illegal operations, financial holdings, political connections. 15 years of compound information. She handed it to him. With this and the Swiss accounts, we wouldn't just survive the war, we'd control it. Vince opened the portfolio and felt his breath catch. Names, dates, photographs, financial records, a roadmap to every major crime family's vulnerabilities. Why are you giving this to me? Because your daughter asked you to save a stranger, and you did. Because you're willing to risk everything for family. And because she hesitated. Because the Rosselli name is about to mean something again, and I need a partner strong enough to help me carry it. A partnership. An alliance. Your infrastructure and reputation, my birthright and resources. Together, we're stronger than any individual family. And Sophia? Gets to grow up in a world where her father is the most powerful man on the East Coast instead of a target for every ambitious lieutenant. Elena's voice softened. She gets to stay innocent a little longer. Before Vince could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from Tony. 5 minutes. Come to the front door. Hands visible. Time to go, Elena said. Remember, I'll be. Elena, he caught her arm. That night 15 years ago, when your family died. Do you ever wish you'd been there? Every day. Why? Because sometimes surviving isn't the blessing people think it is. Sometimes it's just a different kind of curse. She looked at him with understanding. Is that what tonight feels like? A curse? No, Vince said, checking his weapon one final time. Tonight feels like a reckoning. They moved through the garden shadows like ghosts, Elena disappearing toward the study's French doors while Vince approached the front entrance. The house he'd called home for 8 years felt alien now, contaminated by betrayal. Tony answered the door himself, still playing the role of concerned friend. He looked older than his 52 years, gray threading through his black hair, but his smile was the same one Vince had trusted for 2 decades. Vincent. Thank God you're here. We need to talk. Where's my daughter? Safe. Upstairs with Mike and Sal, probably watching cartoons. Tony stepped aside to let him enter. Come on, we'll sort this out. The living room had been rearranged, chairs positioned to give Tony's men clear sight lines, escape routes blocked. Professional work, but then Tony had learned from the best. Sal Benedetto and Joey the Fish flanked the stairway, hands resting casually on their weapons. Mike Romano stood by the window, supposedly watching the grounds but really blocking Vince's retreat. Sit, Tony said, gesturing to an isolated chair in the center of the room. We need to discuss your new friend. Elena's not my friend. She's a job that went sideways. Elena Rosselli, Vincent. The daughter of Don Antonio himself, alive and breathing in our city. Tony's mask finally slipped, revealing the cold ambition beneath. Do you have any idea what her existence means? Enlighten me. It means 15 years of careful planning, 15 years of building something real, gets thrown away because you couldn't let one woman die. Tony began pacing, his agitation growing. She's a walking nuclear bomb, Vincent. Every secret, every deal, every alliance from the old days, she knows it all. And you're afraid she knows about you. Tony's laugh was bitter. Afraid? I'm terrified. Because she doesn't just know about the money I've been managing. She knows about the night her family died. You mean the night you killed them? I mean the night I saved us all from a war that would have destroyed everything. Tony's composure cracked completely. Antonio Rosselli was getting greedy, making moves on territories that weren't his. If I hadn't acted, we'd all be dead or in prison by now. So you decided to play judge and executioner. I decided to think strategically. Something you've apparently forgotten how to do. Vince kept his face neutral, but inside he was counting. 4 men total, all armed, all positioned to prevent his escape. But they were also positioned exactly where Elena would expect them to be. The thing is, Vincent, Tony continued, I still believe in what we built together. You're like a brother to me. That's why I'm giving you a choice. What choice? Help me clean up this mess. Elena Rosselli dies tonight, quietly, and we go back to business as usual. Your empire stays intact, Sophia grows up safe and protected, and nobody ever needs to know about this unfortunate misunderstanding. And if I refuse? Tony's smile turned predatory. Then you're choosing her over your own family. Over Sophia. And that makes you a liability I can't afford. Daddy? Sophia's voice drifted down from the second floor, small and frightened. Are you home? I want to come downstairs. In a minute, Princess. Vince called back, his heart breaking at the fear in her voice. You see? Tony spread his hands. She needs her father. But she needs him alive and reasonable, not dead and heroic. That's when the lights went out. In the sudden darkness, Vince heard Elena's voice, cold and clear. The Rosselli family sends their regards. The war for the future had begun. Chaos erupted in the darkness. Muzzle flashes lit the room like deadly fireworks as Tony's men opened fire blindly. Vince rolled behind the leather couch, feeling bullets tear through expensive upholstery where he'd been sitting moments before. Sophia! He shouted toward the stairs. Stay in your room! Lock the door! I got him! Sal's voice, followed by the distinctive crack of Elena's beretta. Sal's scream cut short with a wet gurgle. She's in the house! Joey the fish, panic making his voice crack. How the hell did she? Another shot silenced him permanently. Vince moved through the chaos with practiced precision, using furniture and shadows for cover. 20 years in this business had taught him that gunfights were won by patience, not panic. Vincent! Tony's voice, still commanding despite the mayhem. This is insane! She's going to get Sophia killed! A fair point, except Elena had thought of that too. From upstairs came the sound of Sophia's bedroom door opening, followed by his daughter's voice, calm now, not frightened. Elena says to tell you the upstairs is secure. Smart woman. She'd gone for Sophia first, turning Tony's hostage into their advantage. Mike Romano tried to flank toward the stairway, but Elena's voice drifted down from the landing. I wouldn't, Mike. Your wife Catherine is lovely, by the way. Shame about her gambling problem. Mike froze. In the old days, the Rossellis had been legendary for their intelligence networks. Apparently, Elena had inherited more than just money. This is over, Tony. Vince called out, working his way toward the kitchen. Let's finish it like men. Finish what? Vincent, she's poisoning you against your own family. Against me. You stopped being family the night you murdered children in their beds. A long silence, broken only by the sound of sirens in the distance. Someone had called the police, probably a neighbor hearing the gunshots. The Rosselli children were going to grow up to be problems. Tony said finally, his voice coming from near the fireplace. Just like their father. Just like her. And Sophia? What was she going to grow up to be? Safe. Protected. If you'd just been reasonable. Vince saw his chance and took it, moving fast across the kitchen toward Tony's position. But Tony had been expecting it, swinging around with his .38 raised. The two men faced each other across the destroyed living room, weapons drawn, 20 years of brotherhood reduced to this moment. I loved you like a brother, Vince said quietly. I still do, Tony replied. That's why I'm giving you one last chance. Kill her, Vincent. Kill her now, and we'll tell everyone she died in the crossfire. Sophia never has to know her father chose a stranger over family. Daddy? Both men turned. Sophia stood at the top of the stairs, Elena's protective arm around her shoulders. His daughter looked small in her pink pajamas, but her voice was steady. Is Elena going to stay with us now? The question hung in the air like a prayer. Vince looked at his daughter, innocent, trusting, believing that the world could still be fair. Then he looked at Elena, the last survivor of a murdered bloodline, offering him a chance to build something better from the ashes. Yeah, Princess, he said, never taking his gun off Tony. She's going to stay. Tony's face twisted with rage and grief. Then you've killed us all. No, Elena said, stepping forward with Sophia's hand in hers. I've saved us all. She pulled out a small device, a digital recorder. Everything you just said, Tony. Every confession, Every justification for murdering my family. It's all here. Her smile was sharp as winter. Along with the financial records, the political connections, and a very detailed letter explaining how Vincent Torino discovered and exposed the traitor in his organization. Tony's gun wavered. You're bluffing. The Rosselli family never bluffs. We plan. Elena's voice carried the weight of generations. This recording goes to the FBI, the New York families, and every newspaper in the city if anything happens to any of us. Your choice. You think the other families will accept this? A Rosselli coming back from the dead? They'll accept strength, Vince said. And unity. Elena and I aren't just surviving, we're evolving. The old way of doing business, the constant wars, the betrayals, that ends tonight. Tony laughed bitterly. You're naive if you think. Uncle Tony? Sophia's small voice cut through the tension. Why are you pointing a gun at my daddy? The question broke something in Tony's face. He looked at the little girl he'd held as a baby, the child he'd sworn to protect, and saw the fear she was trying so hard to hide. I'm sorry, sweetheart, he whispered. I'm so sorry. The gun turned away from Vince, toward Tony's own temple. Don't, Elena said sharply. Death is too easy. You owe the families you've stolen from, the people you've betrayed. You owe them justice. What kind of justice? The kind that pays back what was taken. Every dollar, every connection, every piece of power you built on my family's blood. Elena's voice turned businesslike. You're going to transfer everything back to its rightful owners. And then you're going to disappear. Tony's hand shook. And if I refuse? Then I let Vincent decide your fate. And I don't think he's feeling very merciful tonight. The sirens were getting closer. Time for decisions. Tony lowered his gun. The accounts are in a safe deposit box downtown. Keys in my office. Smart choice, Elena said. As the police lights began flashing through the windows, Sophia tugged on Elena's hand. See, Daddy? She said, smiling up at both of them. We saved her. But Elena knelt down to Sophia's level, her voice gentle. Actually, sweetheart, you saved me. And your daddy. And probably a lot of other people too. How? By teaching us that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is help a stranger. Vince watched his daughter hug the woman who'd turned his world upside down in less than 24 hours. Outside, the police were surrounding the house, but he wasn't worried. Elena had been right. They held all the cards now. The old era was over. The age of constant warfare, endless betrayals, and blood feuds that lasted generations. What came next would be different. Stronger. Built on something more solid than fear and greed. As Elena stood and took his hand, the rose pendant catching the light from the police cars outside, Vince realized that saving her had saved them all. But destiny, he knew, always came with a price. And somewhere in the city, other families were already learning that the Rosselli bloodline had returned. The real war was just beginning. But for tonight, holding his daughter's hand while Elena squeezed his other, Vincent Torino allowed himself to believe that some wars were worth fighting. Some prices were worth paying. And some bloodlines were worth preserving.